welcome to Season 4, Episode number 17 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. As always, we are part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network, and this is the 2022 Spanish Grand Prix Race Review. You've got Andy, and I'm along with Deanna tonight, so it's our, I think we call it Podcast 2.0 formation.
Yes, we'll go with that.
How you doing?
I'm good. I actually just had a birthday this weekend.
Congratulations.
So yeah. Thanks. Well, now I have to pay for my own insurance, so not really.
Oh, it's that birthday.
That birthday.
Yeah, they did. Well, yeah, you get nothing else given to you at this point. Now it's all just starts to get taken away.
It's all downhill from here. So, yeah, really exciting times.
Well, anyway, congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you.
And as always, you can find our lovely show on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Please see our link tree in our show notes. If you're on YouTube, please feel free to give us a like and click the subscribe button. Or if you're on your favorite podcasting app, and Lord knows we're on just about all of them, please click the 5-star button. If you're on any one of those apps, it just helps us get our content to you that much quicker. You can email our show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can find our wonderful website, www.outlapf1.com. If you are a new fan, we have something for you. We have F1 for Beginners. It is Season 4, Episode 4. Please feel free to check that out. You can check out our F1 for Beginners series on YouTube as well. It is soup to nuts, everything we love about the sport we love to talk about, Formula One. We take you in all of the detail to get you caught up and to watch the races as much as the experts do. You can always check out Relapse with Deanna, her now Spanish Grand Prix reaction. I saw it go up earlier this afternoon. It should be a great time. Feel free to go check that out. Just as a reminder, thank you so much to everybody who continues to support the Outlap F1 Nation. Thank you so much to Yori Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Cody Walsh, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Mary Brown, Jonathan Scott, and Matt Polanski, who has made a triumphant return in the fan email section from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast. So we will be looking forward to reading that a little bit later on in the show. You can also check out our link in the show notes. As we've said before, $1, $5, whatever you want to give, it will go back into the show. That's what we've been doing. We hope you've enjoyed the enhancements so far this season. Just as a reminder, you can check out from the good folks at Manscaped our code OUTLAP, which is 20% off and free shipping. We are always proud to bring that to you. And also, James is not here to model it tonight, but if he was here, he'd probably have his Scuderia Ferrari shirt from the F1Guy.com. Our friend Vincenzo Landino has his shirt line out. Please feel free to check that out if you would so like to. And just as also a reminder, our newest sponsor is athleticgreens.com/merging. I've heard their ads all over the place in the sports talk world. So I feel like we're actually making it as a podcast when we actually have real sponsors. Please do check them out. athleticgreens.com/emerging is your code for that. So, headline of the day. Deanna, tell us about what you thought.
Good race at Barcelona. And I think today, great race. I enjoyed it. And I think this proves that it's not always the track that is boring. It is kind of all of the other elements. When we have cars that can follow a bit better, when you have high tire drag, a couple rogue little wind gusts that kind of throw in some interest there. But yeah, I think it was a great race all the way around. And yeah, I just wish tires would degrade more, and then we get a ton of strategy stuff, and that's really the key for me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the twists and turns of the Circuit de Catalunya provided a very twisty, turny race that was honestly very entertaining, and I think you kind of nailed it right on the head. You sprinkle in some warm temperatures, some tires that were probably to the softer variety. I think this is really what Pirelli was trying to do when they introduced the 3 compounds, and all the teams took it in this other direction of we throw on a set of hards and we just go to the end. Well, that was not the intent. This was really, I think, the intent when they did that, when they made that rule, and it proved out to be very entertaining because you had drivers on, some were on 2 stops, some were on 3 stops. There was talk of somebody even trying to do a 1 stop, although that was never actually going to happen. And these warm temperatures just made it, you didn't really know who you were racing, so it proved to be actually very compelling, even if the last maybe 10 laps weren't as exciting as they could have been. I thought this was actually quite a fun show.
Agreed.
All right, so James, who is unfortunately not with us tonight, his headline of the day, and I share this with him, was heartbreak. Him being the Leclerc supporter that he is. Thankfully, Leclerc was Mr. Positivity after his retirement and cheered him up. I saw him actually at some other charity event, I think in Italy tonight, so looking very dapper. So the good news is it looks like Leclerc can't really blame him for what we're going to talk about, so I don't think he has anything other than that's kind of the way it goes. And for John, thank you very much for contributing. Both James and John, John chimes in and says, "I guess it's no longer Ferrari's championship to lose." Yeah, it's a fair point. Hopefully, Charles got his Monaco wrecks out of the way for 2022 because we are turning around and going fast and furious into Monaco next week. So that makes sense. Any thoughts on the headlines before we move on?
We'll see about Monaco. It's not gone well. In very recent history, it has not gone well for Leclerc there. So,
yeah, that is true. Unfortunately, we did hear the Monaco-esque no radio message, as we'll get to in a little bit. All right, so we had the qualifying session on Saturday, and we'll take you through that. All right, going out in P20 in Q1 was the Williams of Nicholas Latifi. P19 was Alex Albon. P18, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin rebooted car. Didn't go so well for them. P17 was Fernando Alonso. That was actually a bit of a shocker. P16, Sebastian Vettel in the other Aston Martin. Both Aston Martins not making it out of Q1. P15 was Joe Granu. P14, Pierre Gasly. P13, Yuki Tsunoda. P12, Esteban Ocon. P11, with his lap time being deleted, was Lando Norris, meaning he did not advance to Q3, but that meant that Mick Schumacher in the Ferrari did advance to Q3 for the first time in his career in the Haas. P9 was Daniel Ricciardo. P8 was Kevin Magnussen. P7 was Valtteri Bottas. P6, Lewis Hamilton. P5 was Sergio Perez. P4 was George Russell. P3 was Carlos Sainz. P2 was Max Verstappen, and with a lap time of 118.750 was Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Deanna, any thoughts on the qualifying sessions?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the first time that, Mercedes did actually look like they made that step up with Russell out-qualifying Perez, and not at a weird track. This is when they're at a million times, so that's very genuine feeling like fourth. So that was good to see and kind of see them getting back into the hunt a little bit here. And then also just the excitement of Leclerc ruining his first lap, but then just blitzing everybody on the second one. So, it was a fun time.
Yeah, no, I thought the sessions were actually quite entertaining. Obviously gutted a bit for Lando not making it. Thought we could have two McLarens in the top 10. Nice to see a little bit of recovery there from Danny. Did not necessarily translate into the race as it turned out, but Lando, as we'll get to, struggling with some tonsillitis over the course of the weekend. So that was good to see. Leclerc, like you mentioned, the spin, making it just extra that much more dramatic, and then he goes out and just absolutely destroyed Max's time. Max unable to respond with a DRS actuator issue. Was thought it might have been an engine problem. It was really just the DRS didn't activate, and that also turned out to be a theme as we go into the race. So foreshadowing a bit of things that happened on Saturday, as we'll find out as we go now into the race on Sunday. And as we are apt to do, we will start with those back markers. So P20 at the end of the day was Joe Granu. He did not finish. P19, Charles Leclerc, also DNF, did not finish today due to an engine problem. P18, Alex Albon in the Williams. P17, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, could not capitalize on his good qualifying form. And P16 was Nicholas Latifi. P15 was Lance Stroll. P14 thought he had a shot at points today, Mick Schumacher in the Haas. And P13 was Pierre Gasly. Any significant thoughts on the back markers?
Nicholas Latifi probably having his best race of the year. Actually made a couple overtakes, overtook his teammate. Albon had an issue, had his floor damaged, and then just his tires kept degrading. He had a 4-stop at the end of the day, so it was just absolutely nowhere. But he also passed K-Mag, who was on a 2-stop strategy along with his teammate. And then I think Vettel was the only one on a 2-stopper, which was not the way to go. But I really think that Haas, it's the Haas and the Alpine, I think, are two sides of a coin, whatever the phrase is. The Haas has been great in qualifying pace, not so hot in race pace, and the Alpine, I think, has been flipped. So, yep, it's disappointing. It looked a little bit there like Schumacher might kind of be near the points, but then they left him on that two-stop. They left him out, and he just got drowned and just got overtaken by everybody. So,
yeah, I mean, it was interesting. There was a lot of, I think it was actually Norris that kicked off the third stop in the midfield, and once he went, and then once they saw that he was, continued to have pace, everybody then came back in and Haas-fied themselves on the wrong end of that call, basically. Yeah, I mean, they are really tough to figure out. Great qualifying pace, really bad execution in the last couple of races. And yeah, Mick was kind of just a sit and duck kind of there at the end. So yeah, I mean, and to talk about the championship flips over on its head with one Charles Leclerc. Now we've seen, we had reliability issues on the Mercedes. We knew we've seen that. We've seen reliability issues with all the other engine makes. The one we really hadn't seen yet was a Ferrari go pop. And lo and behold, we hear the no, Ferrari go pop at a bad time because it looked like he was cruising.
Yeah, and James kind of mentioned it in his headline or whatever. Leclerc did at least come out of that very positive because he was solid in qualifying, and he was just going to be kind of off to the races, off on his own, had his, or most likely had his engine stayed alive. So he was really fully in control of that race, and it was through no fault of his own. So I think there's still positives there. I think you kind of worry, I think a little bit maybe about Ferrari and heat or something like that. I don't know, because you also have Joe going too. I don't know officially what that issue was, but yeah, we'll see. But not great, and it leads Max to be our new championship leader.
Yeah, it's all kind of turned on its head. I mean, for Leclerc, it had so much high ground, but it's all evaporated in really the last 3 races, really. Mm-hmm. And Max has capitalized on the opportunity, as we will talk about. So, yeah, that was probably the most significant feature of the back markers, one that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be back there. I think everybody else is kind of expected at this point, kind of based on at least the initial running order.
Oh, and then we didn't mention the Green Bull situation, which has been the longest weekend of my life that I've forgot about that. But yeah, copying Red Bull, and it really didn't do much of anything for them. So,
well, it's not surprising. I mean, when you take out a B-spec car, I mean, you look at it, the normal testing program, you would have had 3 days. You would have had 6 full days of testing. That's 8 hours. Here you had basically an hour and a half really to do any sort of test correlation or any of those runs before you really kind of had to get down to try to figure out your qualifying. So I like the fact that at least one of these teams said, we've gone down a way we can't make it work any better. Do I think they've necessarily copied Red Bull? I'll let the courts decide that one, because it's close, and they do have some connections, and I do understand why actually Christian Horner was a little bit perturbed about it, because it looks kind of odd. But the FIA has sanctioned it and said that there's not going to be necessarily any sort of investigation, at least at this point. But if I think as long as they're in the back markers, I don't think you will hear anything else about it. If in 2 or 3 races' time, they get on top of that package and they start to come good. Yeah, I think Christian Horner will probably renew. We might even see a protest at some point, but we'll have to see. It'll be a fascinating thing to watch. Yeah, I mean, I would say kind of Aston Martin were the darlings of Friday until then all of a sudden they actually took the car out on track. And being the darling of Friday is not necessarily a place you want to be.
Yep. And we did not. I just think it's ironic that we went from pink Mercedes to green Red Bull. So,
green Red Bull. It looks good. Yes. I mean, I love the livery.
Yeah, it does. But I just feel like if it was any other team, it probably wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But knowing that they kind of have a little bit of a rep for that does not, I don't think, help their case in the long run. So we'll see if anything else comes of that. Yeah,
something to follow for sure. Absolutely. So moving on into our midfield. P12 was Daniel Ricciardo. P11, Sebastian Vettel. P10, sneaking into the points, was Yuki Tsunoda. P9 was Fernando Alonso, and he had himself a bit of a day today. In the positive, P8, Lando Norris. P7, Esteban Ocon. P6, Valtteri Bottas. P5, talk about yo-yo up and down the grid, turned out to be Lewis Hamilton. And in P4, also with a bit of a recovery, was Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari. Thoughts on the midfield?
I guess kind of starting from the bottom. What's going on with Daniel Ricciardo over there?
According to the team, they said that he didn't have a whole lot of rear downforce, and it was a bad setup that basically permeated into his race. Starting in P9, he was definitely in the preferred position for once. Was in front of Lando for a while, and then Lando said he had more pace, and it didn't even come down to team orders. Lando was able to kind of take him on track, basically no problem, and then kind of flew off into the sunset. It's got to be better from Danny's side of the garage, whether that's a team call or whether that's him not being able to get on top of it. The patience has got to be starting to run thin. We know McLaren have more drivers in their pool, especially from the American side in IndyCar, and in both Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward, who would definitely love to fill in that seat. So that seat's going to start to get hotter than what it was in Spain today, because this is just not good enough. It's just not good enough. They need to score, and they need him to score consistently.
Agreed. Especially seeing what Lando did today, tonsillitis and all.
Yep. And all right, so we'll talk about this. I've listened to his onboard for a long time. He sounded absolutely awful from the minute he got in that car to the minute he got out. I've never heard him sound that bad. Like, it sounded painful. Like, he could barely respond to the team. In fact, even at the end, usually they always say, congratulations to the team or some sort of inspirational message. His engineer just goes, when you get to the end of the pit lane, turn the car off and give me a response click that you got it. And he couldn't even talk, and he just did the click. And he goes, thank you, well done. And I'm like, he had to have been awful. Like, I think I tweeted, find that dude a bed, a cool down room, and let him just be for the rest of the day, or hook him up to an IV, because they probably did, because I would imagine, it's been a while. Tonsillitis is like equivalent to like strep throat in this country. That is not a fun situation to have, much less get into a 200-degree something race car and go around for 66 laps. Gutty performance.
And then hopefully he recovers this week.
I was going to say he doesn't have a whole lot of time to get over it, because he's got to get up and go on to Monaco. So, yeah. Other people in the midfield. Fernando Alonso, starting from P20. He ended up going to the back on he was the first. He will be the first of many to take an engine penalty for going over his allocation of 3 engines in a season. And guess what? We're only in round 6. So, good effort on him. I thought he did some nice overtaking moves to recover into the points, and a solid P9 for Alpine. And Esteban Ocon continues just to do the job. Solid effort. Kind of a lonely race, actually, for him. But that's a good haul of points for the Alpines. That's important for them. Good, solid race there. And here's my guy who I keep telling everybody, stop forgetting about him, Valtteri Bottas, P6. Probably might have made P5 if the Hamilton engine issue would have been flared up maybe a lap or two earlier, but solid result, even though he wasn't necessarily on the best strategy at the end.
No, yeah, he was, I guess he's the highest finisher of those 2 stoppers. And just kind of, again, left out there to dry. But for the most part, very solid. The Alpines in race trim are great off the line, I guess. They're great because Ocon made up 3 places. Alonso, I think, was up to 15th by the end of the first lap as well. So, they look solid in the race, but qualifying 12th and 17th, I think, is just not quite good enough. But we'll see. Hopefully
if you could almost it's weird, and you kind of said it earlier, if you could combine the Haas qualifying form with the Alpine race form, you'd have one heck of a midfield team right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So, all right, before we get into the podium, we have 2 others to talk about. P5, the trials and tribulations of one Lewis Hamilton, starting off at the front, going all the way to the back, trying to maybe throw in the towel and call it a day, but then rallying all the way back to P5. Car looked good, I thought, from when it was on track. They've definitely gotten on top of the initial porpoising problem. If that form can hold, that is actually scary, I think, to the top three, because that team is still good, and Lewis has still got some talent. So what did you think kind of overall? First of all, the incident with Magnussen, where are you at with that?
I put that more on K-Mag. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm with that too, and I think upon review, I think even I saw some post race sound. K-Mag, I think, was more inclined to just kind of take responsibility and say, I didn't probably mean to do that.
It was an aggressive radio message to be like, he did that on purpose, because I don't know in what world he would want to K-Mag, but okay. Although Hamilton kind of having that dejected radio message after was not great. But he rallied back. But I think what was most impressive about his day was he had a true 3-stop, because he had to make up the pit stop time of those 3 stops, but really only had the tire life of 3 sets of tires instead of 4, because they never had a safety car or anything like that. So he was truly just kind of out there on his own after that first stop. On lap 22 was his first stop. He was 19th, and then recovered all the way up to 4th by the end. So yeah, a hugely impressive recovery. He was lapping faster than anybody on track for a lot of the race. So yeah, and if had that incident not happened, I think Toto said they probably could have challenged for the win, and I am inclined to believe it with that pace. So
yeah, I mean, we saw how slippy that car was, especially even in defense with Russell. So I mean, they were definitely there. I mean, they're not like they're in the outskirts of the arena, but they're in the arena. And I think that, if nothing else, is the big takeaway, I think, from today. It's now a 3-horse team race at the front. So that will hopefully prove exciting. We've got, like we said, 22 less 6 is, 16 more rounds to go. Yep. So it's anybody's ball game, and they're not that far out on points. They're only 49 down on Ferrari for P2. So nobody is safe anywhere, as this championship has kind of told us.
And they've done a very good job when the car has not been good to kind of pick up all those pieces when Ferrari and Red Bull do have issues. And they kind of did that today until Hamilton's issue, which I think, had the conditions been slightly cooler today, that might have even been better for Mercedes on top of that. So that looks like one little gremlin that they have. But yeah, just whatever upgrades they brought, they did their job by the looks of it.
Yep. And finishing in P4, the other recovering car on the day was Carlos Sainz. Yet another unprovoked, kind of untouched spin for the Spaniard at home. It looked like he just dropped it going into one of those corners and ended up in the kitty litter.
He said it was a wind gust, and Max said he got a gust too. So I will give them both the benefit on the doubt on that one, because that's not something we see often here, although granted, Leclerc did it on his Q3 run as well. But yeah, it's still not great. It's not great. I never want to see that car in the gravel ever again. Yeah, a decent recovery, but just didn't quite have the pace of the Mercedes or the Red Bulls at the end, which was surprising, seeing as Leclerc was kind of running away with it in the beginning. So, it
would have been interesting had the spin not happened, where he would have ended up, because he might have just ended up right where he was anyway.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been 45 seconds off the lead, but he may have ended up right around that part anyway. So, all right, so moving into our podium, and we have in third place the other Mercedes of George Russell, in the top 5 in every race this season. That's impressive, especially given the nature of that car. P2, Sergio Checo Perez, we have to talk about his race. And in P1, we have to talk about his race too. Again, trials and tribulations and twists and turns, and DRS not working for one Max Verstappen.
Yes. So I think I can try to give a kind of breakdown of the 3 of them, because I think they're all pretty intertwined.
Yeah, I would say exactly.
If you want me to try. Okay. So started off. Wait, first let me check. Yeah. So off the line, Verstappen second behind Leclerc. Sainz kind of drops a bit. Perez kind of drops a bit. Perez gets past Sainz, I mean. And then so does George. So we have... Wow, I'm struggling.
It's
Leclerc, Verstappen.
Perez.
Sainz.
Yep.
Right? Okay, anyway.
Yep.
This is not important. Continuing on. So Verstappen then spins, and that leaves Perez behind Russell. So Perez is trying to get through Russell. Russell is holding him off. Max then catches back up. Perez lets Verstappen through for him to try to get a shot. Verstappen doesn't get through, but then they both pit. Verstappen and Russell pit. So Perez is kind of left out to go. But then they come out of the pits. Verstappen is still behind Russell and cannot get past because that is when his DRS decides to work intermittently. So Max is mashing on the button, can't get anything to work. Perez catches back up. He wants to be let through. They end up just pitting Max anyway. So he's out of the way. So Perez does end up getting past George because that car did have a lot of pace. He was also, I think, on fresher tires at the time. And so they go off. And then during that whole cycle, Max was able to undercut Russell, but then he was still behind Perez, and then what was lapping about over a second faster, and then there was some drama of should Perez let him through or not. He did, although I think had he not let him through, he probably would have gotten through. He was kind of upset about that at the end, but I think at the end that is the summary. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's actually the blow by blow of everything that happened. So the question: do we think team orders were the rule of the day at Red Bull, or was it more of a Perez strategy that never was really going to work, and Red Bull just doing what they had to do and making the call earlier?
I think Red Bull just had to. I think they just had to keep evolving that strategy because the one stop was never going to work. And then they were just kind of, it was 2 against 1. And so they were kind of sacrificing each one. I think as the situation needed it to be. I don't think he was really left out to dry in any way. He was on a solid strategy at the end. It just ended up being, I think Max just had the pace on him today. But yeah, because Max ended up, I think, about 14 seconds down the road, but I don't know. I just I see where Perez is coming from, but I don't think it would have made a difference.
My only quibble with that entire interaction with Checo and the whole team there was, I would have preferred it had they just said, "Hey, Max is probably going to be faster. Don't necessarily hold him up, but you know, or you got." What I would love to have heard was, "You guys can race, do it clean, don't break rule number 1." But settle it on track, and then we'll pick up with the strategy later. I guess they just took it out of his hands, and that, I think, in the moment, in the heat of the day, and that's probably what set Checo off a little bit more. It'd be interesting to see if this is really the first sign of that Red Bull second seat. I've always kind of referred to it sometimes as the poison pill of, you get a great car, but this is the stuff that you have to deal with. You have to know that team right now is geared towards maximizing results for Max, and individual results don't necessarily matter, especially now that they're back in front in the constructors too. Yeah,
and again, Max was lapping so much faster, so it was kind of inevitable. And I think kind of the thinking was, well, if it was reversed, Red Bull would keep Perez behind. But I don't know that we've ever seen that situation, honestly, to know. Because we've never been in a place where Perez could win with Max in a slower car at that at that time. So I just, I see no issue with it.
It was very much a twisty turny development that kind of came out of what was a very twisty turny race because the parameters kept changing. Like all of a sudden you went from Leclerc's 20 seconds up the road, and now all of a sudden the Russell Verstappen battle turns out to be for the lead when Charles retires. So, it just the dynamic of all of that and it changing all in real time. I think it was fascinating from at least a fan perspective. I was thoroughly enthralled by all three of them, honestly. I thought it was a great fight for the win.
Yep. And just big props to Russell for, I know Max had the issue with DRS, but just to hold him up for that long, and definitely a worse car. And also kind of props to the new regs for Max being able to follow so closely for so long. What was really fun.
Yeah. You know what I didn't hear today, which I was so happy I didn't hear? DRS train.
Yes.
Didn't hear that at all today.
And I was
like, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. But, like, I would constantly look at the timing tower and be like, oh, nobody's within a second of each other. Like, I guess it's just going to settle down now. And then all of a sudden, somebody would pop out, like, overtakes, and things were happening. And, yeah, it was great. It was great. And I think this has probably been the best example of these new regs so far. And this has been my favorite race of the season, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of put this track out there and said that this was going to be kind of the big test. Because all the other tracks we kind of knew, or we thought we knew, other than Miami, we didn't know really what to expect there at all. But, you know, this one was the one that, like, historically has always been huge DRS trains. Nobody can make the move. There's always potential for move, and nobody wants to get out and into that dirty air. You didn't have that here. You were able to see moves get made if somebody was on the pace, or if they had DRS when they were expected to have DRS. You could see a move get made. It was clear Verstappen was definitely faster than Russell. I loved the defending. I love the sequence of, especially when Max and Russell are going through that turn 3, turn 4 complex. Neither of them are giving an inch, and that was great racing. I mean, you never, and we never would have said that in Spain even a year ago, even with the madness that last season was. So yeah, great result. I thought, you know, the circuit itself, I thought played very well, and I didn't have a problem with. I thoroughly enjoyed the battles this season at Spain, and I never thought I would say that. So kudos to the Circuit de Catalunya. Got to work on their traffic management a little bit, getting people in and out of that venue, but at least the racing was good, and I think the crowd that was there, if they could find water, left happy. So we are going to take a quick break. We will come on back. We'll pay a bill or two, and we'll get into our driver standings, the fan emails. The fans have been very, very active. Thank you very much again. And we'll get into our awards and the rest, and our predictions game, and all the rest. So come on back. All right, welcome back to Season 4, Episode number 17 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. We are proud members of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network, and this is the 2022 Spanish Grand Prix Race Review. You've got Andy, and I'm along with Deanna tonight, and we are getting into our driver and team standings. Deanna, take us through the drivers.
Yes, so our new championship leader is Max Verstappen with 110 points, and 6 points behind him is now Charles Leclerc. In third is Perez on 85 points, Russell in fourth with 74, Sainz in fifth with 65, Hamilton in sixth with 46, Norris in seventh with 39, Bottas in eighth with 38, Ocon in ninth with 30, and K-Mag still in 10th with 15.
6 through 10, going to be very, very tight throughout probably the rest of this season. So our team standings are as follows. Red Bull Racing, not named Red Bull Racing Renault, but Red Bull Racing Red Bull Powertrains now is on the top of the constructor standings on 195 points. In second place is now Scuderia Ferrari on 169. Third is Mercedes at 120. Fourth is McLaren on 50. Fifth is Alfa Romeo on 39. Sixth is Alpine on 34. Seventh, AlphaTauri on 17 points. In eighth place is Haas Ferrari on 15 points. Ninth place, Aston Martin with 6 points. And in 10th place is Williams on 3. Once again, every constructor scoring points and scoring multiple points. Love to see it. All right, so our fan emails. Deanna, it's your time to shine, as James would say. Here we go.
Okay, starting with Rachel Fleming. I thought Perez was treated a little harshly by Red Bull. Not so much over the win, but when Max didn't have DRS, Perez was not allowed to overtake when Perez could have easily got Russell, as he proved when Max pitted. Are Red Bull blindsided by keeping Max ahead of Perez no matter what? So kind of what I remember of that situation was Perez was still about a second and a half behind. He kind of caught up to them towards the end of the lap. If you're about to go through that DRS zones, it makes sense for Max to kind of get one more shot at it. And then I think right after that he pitted.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was... I think at the end of the day, I think Red Bull did a good job of doing some convenient pit strategy to kind of take whatever pressure was going to build in that situation off. And that's why I was curious to know what you kind of thought of their strategy, because I wondered if that was even part of it was, we're just going to, we need to pit, so we'll just pit now and just relieve the pressure on whatever the situation before it turns into a thing.
I mean, it makes sense, because, what if neither one can get past Russell? Why would you leave two cars there when you can just split the strategy and get at least one car out kind of off on their own? I think it makes sense. I think it was Max both times, but Also, that is not surprising, but
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting if we ever have that situation where it is reversed,
Yeah.
where Perez is clearly faster than Max. What does Red Bull do then? And I think we kind of have to kind of hold this kind of like up and to say, okay, this is an example, but we don't really know what they really think until it's reversed. So, we'll see what happens then. And if it changes, and, then I think these points, I was kind of railing against, the team order concept earlier on Twitter. But I think upon review, we just kind of hold this one up and see what they do the next time, and then kind of judge it after that.
agreed. Okay, next up, Brian says, even as a Max fan, I'm gutted for Charles. Max was spectacular, almost lost it to a wind gust and dealt with a faulty DRS flap, but he still rose to victory today. Love the clean battle with George as well. Max, Charles, George, Latifi will be some fun battles for years to come. Okay.
Well, 3 out of the 4. Latifi repping Team Canada, I guess, as good as he could today. Yeah, I mean, I thought for Max to go from the screaming and yelling Max that, we thought was, it was all going to come apart, to then get it back together and to look, when somebody else hands it to you, you got to be there to take it. And Ferrari handed it to him, and Max took it. So good on him for it.
And still keeps the streak alive, where every single race he's finished this year, he has won.
He is literally, to borrow a NASCAR parlance, he's checkers of records this year. That's been Max Verstappen.
Okay, next up, Dave Doherty says, are you convinced that the Mercedes are going the right way?
Yeah, I think they have cured, at least preliminarily, the porpoising problem. And you can go back, you can watch footage from the initial test on the same track, and it's vastly different. Now, I don't know if the hot temperatures helped or hindered them today. That, I think, is something that I want to see kind of moving forward. And then, what other types of tracks with different types of corners, what do they do? But that car looked slippy. It looked good. It looked on the pace. If they're, like I said, I think they're at the outskirts of that arena, but they're in the picture now, where before I wouldn't have given that to them.
Yep. This is easily the best that they've looked all season. So for now, I say yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it was interesting. I saw a chart that said that, believe it or not, the delta between pole and Mercedes was actually lower in Bahrain, where the porpoising was probably at its worst because they were still in the beginning. But it feels a lot different. I mean, maybe the numbers say it that way. But I think in general, just in terms of driver confidence, I think both those guys, both George and Lewis, are going to be a lot more confident, and they're going to push that car a lot more now.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest seller, though, I think, was Hamilton's race pace. So hopefully that gets better. Just so we can have a three-way fight. Anyway, next up, Scuderia F1 podcast says, with Latifi finishing ahead of Albon, should Williams look at locking him into a longer-term deal while simultaneously replacing Albon with Nick DeVries? Not a biased question.
So I think he's trying to promote the Canadian well-being here. I don't think that's going to happen. It's looking like the rumors that I'm hearing more and more are more Nick DeVries for Nicholas Latifi. It was interesting that DeVries was there this weekend. It was interesting that Nick DeVries had an FP1 drive there this weekend.
It was interesting that Nick DeVries was faster in FP1.
Yep, all of the above. I'm thinking it's just the timing on poor Nicholas Latifi. Today's result notwithstanding, I think the body of work is kind of spoken for itself.
Yep. This was definitely his best race, but he is still pulling a Mazepin and being 21st in the 20 driver championship. So
we thought that was going to be hard to do.
Yes. Granted, we're only 6 races in. Mazepin did that for an entire season. So
that's true. That is true.
I have faith. I have faith in Latifi at least. Okay, next up, Dead Randy says it was a disappointment. Max's unearned win after tantrums all day and Lewis's second lap surrender. The first 2 races of the season showed such promise, but the last 4 have failed to impress. I disagree.
Yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed today.
Race, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what race you're watching there, Dead Randy, my friend. I thought this was a twisty, turny, up and down race that had guys going from the back to the front, starting in the front, dropping to the back, and coming back. And whoever thought we would say that about Spain? Mm-hmm. This is DRS trained city. So I I'm still very enthusiastic for this championship, and it's been a twisty-turny ride. I mean, we had over 40-point delta in the Constructors turnaround, and we've had almost a 50-point Drivers' Championship turnaround in the span of 6 races. So, I mean, we don't know where this is going to end up. Who knows what could happen? And now if we have a third team in the mix, it's going to get spicy, man. You know, the gloves are going to come off. Old rivalries will be renewed. New rivalries will pop up. So I hope you stay with it, Dad.
Agreed. All right. And for the last fan email is from Matt Polanski. He says, today's race is called The Inevitable Return of the Great White Dope. I'm back watching F1 because MotoGP has me waking up at 7:30 a.m. even on the weekends when there isn't a race. This race had everything. Sights on Hamilton, on Magnussen abuse, watching a Williams for 3 laps for reasons, Hamilton river dancing through the field, and Red bullying. Red bullying is that thing where Red Bull forces their second driver to submit to Max because of reasons. Built on the back of a red engine going boom, Max takes the lead in the championship. Then he'll extend it when Charles crashes out in Monaco.
Wow, I have missed this. Welcome back, Matt, and it's nice to know you still got it.
Agreed.
All right. We will now move into our weekly awards. And as we are apt to do, we start with the rubbish. I will let John and James take the floor first. John says Ricardo. Can't really blame him there. We talked about that. And the TV director. I actually thought the TV director was better today. The only thing I had a problem with was one issue, and I think you may even talk on it, so I'll let you go first.
So my rubbish is the drone.
That's where I thought you were going to go. I set it up there for you?
Yes. I hate the drone. I hate it. It's shaky. It looks like worse quality than all the other footage. You have one flying vessel that provides you so much better footage. Like, just use the helicopter. Just use it. Like, don't start with all the drone stuff. It looks horrible. They said at the end that they were going to try to use it more. I was like, please don't.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It might sound cool on paper, but it does not work in practice. I hate it.
It works on a NASCAR oval because you know where the cars are going to be. Here, the drone is trying to, like, trail and do the twisty-turny bit, and then, like, this just doesn't work. I mean, it's you're better off with the camera on the rail, honestly, because at least you know kind of how that shot is going to work and you can predict it. So I'm with you on the drone. James is his rubbish is going to be Aston Martin. And his bonus pick on that are his predictions this season. Yeah, him and I have... Well, his actual predictions, my fantasy team, has been so linked to Ferrari that the last few rounds have been rough. Let's just put it that way. Just rough. So I feel his pain on that one. So my rubbish, I'm going to have to give this one out to Lewis Hamilton for saying I want to stop on lap 2. I got it. I understood it. It's big picture thinking. But today is exactly the reason you don't do that. You have to be able to play it out. And look what happened. You got not only points, but good points. You were almost P4 if it wasn't, for a late water leak at the end. Dude's got as much talent as he's still got the talent. You can obviously see that. The car is now coming back. I just don't want to hear, I want to stop on lap 2. That just annoyed me. And it annoyed Martin Brundle, too.
He fought through the entire field basically twice in Brazil. That is something he's very good at. So, yeah. I didn't love to hear it in the moment. I'm happy, though, it all worked out in the end.
I was happy for whomever, whether it was Bono or maybe Toto Wolff came on the radio and said, hey, we got to play this out. I'm glad they did that because it just shows how good the car is, and 2, how good the car can be when that dude is hooked up. So it was fun and entertaining, and I was glad to see it. All right, so moving on to our analysis paralysis. We'll let James go first on this one. He's giving it to the Mercedes. He's saying they should have let Lewis Hamilton quit when he wanted to. I'm glad they didn't, as I just said. John is going to give this to Red Bull. Not really an analysis paralysis, but he felt bad for Checo. Barely into the 2022 season, he has to move over for Max twice. Gets refused to let get past Max when he clearly had the pace and the alternate strategy earlier in the race. I think we've touched on this. We're kind of not... I think the two of us are not necessarily sure how that all would have played out. given a second and third look at it as I've done. So we'll just kind of leave that one kind of there. Deanna, what's your thought on analysis paralysis?
I think we're going to have similar ones. It's going to Haas for sticking their drivers on that two-stop. And for a pretty long time, Schumacher was on those hards from lap 30, so that was over half the race. And then they put K-Mag on hards, and yeah, just awful. They both sank like rocks, and it was just sad to watch.
Yeah, I mean, amazingly, I think everybody who came in and took the third pit stop pretty much ended up after the pit stops where they started. So nobody really lost out on that. But for the Haas's, because they were still out there and then they were sitting ducks. So I guess kudos to Pirelli for creating with the C3 tire. That was actually a really good race tire, and you never really see that with the soft compound. So good on you for your tire selection this week, because I think, like we said before, this is how it's supposed to work. Mm-hmm. You want to see these 2 and 3 stop races, and the teams have just kind of gamed the system. So Pirelli, harder compounds might be the way to go. Mm-hmm. Interesting way, especially when it's this hot. So I'm going to give it, I will double up with you, Haas, and especially the call for Mick Schumacher. That cost him probably his first points. Just as I was thinking, hey, maybe we'll get Mick Schumacher in the points. He's getting literally passed down the straight by, I think it was Yuki Tsunoda. So in the points and then out of the points just that fast. Surprised that once you realize it didn't work, that you don't just come in and put a Joker set on and see what happens, because you never know. But they rode that strategy all the way to the end, and unfortunately it rode them right out of the points. Yep. So for Dark Horse, James is going with Lando Norris. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm going to go with Valtteri Bottas. Don't forget about that dude. Quietly having an amazing season in a new car, and dragging the Alfa Romeo up into the points consistently every week. John is going with Esteban Ocon / the now Colorado River bather ass-man Valtteri Bottas as well. Deanna, who's your dark horse?
Fernando Alonso, P20, P9. And again, that car looks awful in qualifying. Fantastic in race pace. So, good work.
Yep. Good job for Fredo there. And so, driver of the day, James is going to give it to Max Verstappen. John is going to give it to Sir Lewis Hamilton. I can't say that I'm surprised by either of those. Deanna, what you got there?
I'm going to give it to Lewis Hamilton.
I will actually agree with you. I will give it to Lewis Hamilton as well. Thank you, Lewis, for not conceding on lap 2 and for providing one heck of a good show. So hopefully that is the harbinger of things to come. A 6-person championship is more fun than a 3-person championship any day of the week. So will be interesting to see how they play in the arena at the sharp end of the grid. All right, so time to now recap the predictions. Apparently I found something this weekend, so I ended up with 4 points. I had Charles Leclerc as the pole sitter. I had the slowest time. That was the other thing that helped me, was I just kept slower than everybody else, and the lap times were very slow compared to what we thought. So I took the quali time. I had the race fastest lap because they were like 6 seconds. We were all 6 seconds off. We were in 118s. The actual race fastest lap was like in the 124s. So we were bad on the lap times. And I got one of the prop bet guys. I think I had we had 18 classified finishers, so that's what I got there. John had 3 points this week. He had Leclerc on he had P1 for the podium. He had Max taking the win. He had P14 on a bonus pick, and he got the prop bet as well, saying 18. Deanna, you had 2 points this week. P15 for your bonus pick, and you got the prop bet along with the rest of us. And James only has 1 point. He had the pole sitter. He had Charles Leclerc. That was about it in terms of his predictions. So to recap where we all stand, John continues to be the rabbit that we are all trying to chase. He's got 17 points. I'm a little bit closer to him now. I'm on 15 points. Deanna, you're right on my tail on 14 points. And James will be doing some interesting predictions next week, apparently. He's on 11 points. So, any final thoughts as we wrap up Spain and move into Monaco?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready for Monaco. I'm excited. Hopefully, with these cars, maybe we find a way to make it slightly better. I hope Charles Leclerc can finally break the curse and get back into the fight, and we just kind of see him and Max go out at Monaco. I think that would be really great. Really excited, and then we get to watch the 500 right after.
That's true. Next week, thank God, we have our greatest day in motorsports all lined up for us. We may even talk some Indy 500 next weekend because I think that may actually be a whole lot of fun too. Congratulations to one Scott Dixon. Old is still good at the Indy 500. Woo! Was that fast. And on the edge, it's all right there for you. But yeah, we're going to head to Monaco, so there will be glitz, there will be glam, and hopefully we'll have a race to talk about after that. And then we'll all settle in for the Indy 500 and see what happens there. So McLaren SP look good. Chip Ganassi look amazing. And don't count out Ed Carpenter and ECR, man. They look pretty damn good, too. So it'll be a fascinating weekend of single-seater motorsport. We will be all here for it. We will be back for sure on Wednesday with a Monaco preview. I think it'll be just James and I, but we'll take care of that. And then next weekend, hopefully we'll be at close to full strength. I don't know exactly what's going on, but we got a holiday weekend, so we will figure it out exactly when we will post the recording. Keep tabs, look out for that. So as always, may all your laps keep fast.